Now, our first guest is a friend of the show who, over the years, has joined us for some tough, sensitive and emotional conversations. Today, he's here to open up about learning to cope with grief and explain why, especially at this time of year, it's so important to talk in order to move forward. So, can we give a really warm welcome to you, Jeff Brazier. Hey, Jeff, how are you doing?
Good, Andrea. How are you?
I am really, really good. Now, Jeff, this is a subject that you are so eloquent on speaking about. Now, we have spoken on this show, we have spoken personally over the years about, you know, the fact that you've retrained as a life coach and you dedicate your life now to supporting people and helping them overcome various different types of trauma. But grief in particular is something that, while we may experience it all year round, at Christmas is particularly painful.
Yes, Christmas is particularly painful. I think it's the day of the year when it is most obvious to us that that person that we've lost simply isn't there. I learnt quite early on in, say, the boys losing their mum that unless we actually went to the grave first thing in the morning and made sure that she was top of the priority list, that the day just didn't run because you're pretending effectively. I still think there's probably a lot of people out there that try and get away with getting through the day as opposed to just recognising it, knowing full well that you're going to be emotional and that absence will be felt, and just making sure that you pay your respects early, because what comes from that, Andrea, is a permission that you grant yourself subconsciously to actually enjoy the rest of the day, and you do, and you can.
Yeah. Jeff, how do you approach those conversations with the boys? Do they bring it up with you, or is it something that you purposely say straight away and consciously make a decision to start those conversations?
You can dictate yourself to the conversation, and I used to do that. I think I used to put a lot of pressure on myself to always immediately preempt these lulls that they can have as a result of grief. But also, I think when you have teenagers, you recognise that by trait, and hormonally, they're actually going to stop opening up about anything, let alone, that particular subject that was actually once quite open. So you have to navigate that. I think I took a lot of pressure off myself by recognising that at a point, I feel like as parents, you're handing the baton over to the children in terms of them developing their independence, their ability to manage their own emotional state. But you were there in the beginning, Stacey. You and I were on the X Factor tour. Fortunately, you were singing and I wasn't, but I hosted that, and you were with me for the 2-3 months, and it was a crazy time. I was so grateful for the bubble that. Pardon?
And the boys came along. I remember the boys coming along for some of it. Everything you had to go through was so incredibly difficult, and I just remember being just in awe of how you handled the situation and just wondering how you even knew what to do, whether it was instinctive or not. You just you stepped up straight away and just knew what you were doing.
No, well, I didn't, but I gave a great impression that I did, and I think that was a big part of my ploy, was ultimately to kind of go into it with confidence and positivity, and that gets you so far, and I'm really proud of myself for how well I did. But at a point, I think the biggest lesson that you can learn yourself in these situations is that actually you're not meant to have all the answers, and actually it's good that you just show them an example of what it's really like to express yourself freely, honestly, to not suppress, to encourage the conversation, to encourage therapy, to encourage all forms of being able to talk about the subject, because when you do, things get slightly more manageable. I decline to use the word easier because it's obviously peaks and troughs, but anyone that suppresses, again, a lot of people, their coping strategy is to suppress, and I'll deal with that another time.
Jeff,
I think it should bring us on actually to what's going on with us at the moment. We're in a pandemic, and death is all around us. Our perspective on death has changed significantly. If you think about the fact that people are losing their lives, and we're kind of having it presented as statistical data. It's understandable, but in some respect, when this is all done and dusted, ladies, I honestly think that we should go back and have some sort of national memorial for the fact that people's the last few months of their life, their quality of life, what was it? Was it besieged with loneliness? And obviously that's because of COVID-19. It's not someone's fault necessarily, but we really must recognise that, because people who have died recently, whether it's COVID or anything else, had far fewer people attending their funerals, celebrating their life, seeing them off.
Yeah.
And it's not fair and it's not equal. So we must recognise that at a later date, I think, especially when, you know, those lives were used as data, and questionable data in some respects. So if I'm to give an opinion, I'd say, you know, I'd love to know how many people are dying actually of COVID.
Jeff,
you know,
sorry to interrupt you, but Jeff, I don't know if you saw yesterday, Matt Hancock, the health minister, stood up in Parliament, and normally he's a very confident, you know, breezy kind of bloke, but he was reduced to the verge of tears because he mentioned that his step-granddad had died recently from the virus. And I think that would have brought it home to a lot of people that even the toughest men, you know, and he is in the probably the toughest job of all at the moment, you know, are feeling tremendous grief when they're losing their family members.
Absolutely. We will all feel the grief, whether we're men or women. Typically, I think we would say that women have the ability to be more honest about their emotional state. And as a result, they will maybe navigate through grief slightly easier. Specifically to Matt Hancock, I needed to see that. I needed to see the human there, because too often I feel like he is expressionless. You know, we can see, you know, people like us that do the job that we do, we can see that he's reading, and I don't know, he's such an important person in our lives right now, and I needed to see a little bit more from him. I actually needed to feel him. So on that occasion, I agree we did.
Yeah.
But yeah, men typically, they'll feel like it would be weak of them to show any emotion and to talk about how they're feeling.
Jeff, can I just ask you something? Because you spoke so honestly about men opening up about their feelings and how people's feeling through the pandemic, and, you know, just supporting your children. There's something I read that was so interesting, that you're still encouraging your children to have therapy now. Why is that, and how important is it to have that open to younger people?
This stigma with therapy is that it's something we do in reaction to things getting as bad as they can possibly be.
Yeah.
That's rubbish. I use it with my children as a preemptive measure. I have it myself and have done for the last 3.5 years, and I'm proud to say that, because I think it shows such strength and courage for anyone to go and actually really tackle their issues and get to the bottom of, maybe, you know, in my case, a childhood that was quite challenging and eventful. So for me to do that work, for the children to have that support, again, as I said to you, when your kids are teenagers, they're less likely to come to you, Judi, with a, "Dad, today I feel a bit like this, can we do this as a result?" What they're likely to do is actually kind of misbehave, or, you know, do something silly, because you know it's an ingredient. You don't necessarily know that grief is the only reason. It probably never is the only reason. But for them to go and have therapy, for me, is an assurance. For them, they grow. I'm watching them develop. Judi, I walked into Bobby's bedroom this morning. Guess what he was doing? Keep it clean.
What was he doing?
Meditating.
Love that. Do you know what? I love what you're saying about therapy, and I always advocate for it, you know, for all of us and for children. So I totally agree with you, and that's what you've inputted.
And Jeff, you yet again, you've spoken so eloquently. We've so sadly run out of time. We have to say goodbye to you now.
And sending you
lots to see you,
men
Jeff.
who are struggling with bereavement and loss. There is a charity called StrongMen. That was what I was here to speak about. It's strongmen.org.uk. Please find it if you're a man.
Thank you, Jeff. We put all the details on our website. So if you've been affected by anything that Jeff has just spoken about there, Jeff, we've put all the details on our website. So lots of love to you.